Hello everyone, it's time to take another art break, and today we're going to be working on this whimsical style rabbit who's driving a carrot car and taking his little family out for some little wonderful drive. I don't know where they're going, but he looks a little fancy. He's got a little top hat on and his little scarf is flying in the wind. So adorable, all put together. I'm going to give you some tips of how you can use a light box to do a tracer on your watercolor paper, and then I'll share some ideas about if you're going to put it into a frame, some of the things you need to think about of how to center it up. I'm going to walk you through the watercolor steps, of course, and then I'm going to end with a little colored pencil to show you how you can add all the little scribbly bits to add the interest. Now, if you'd like to paint along with me, but drawing's not your thing, I got you covered. I do have a sketchbook membership, and you can click that QR code right over there, and that'll lead you right there. It's easy to join, very reasonably priced, and I'd love to have more creative friends join me. Well, let's get started, and I'll show you how I created this whimsical style painting. I just quickly wanted to talk a little bit about using a light box when you're doing watercolor. This is a great way to do this. I will do my first original drawings on copy paper. Then I use the light box to be able to put my image down, and then this one will light up. Then I can lay that down there, and then I can put my watercolor paper over the top, and you're going to see my drawing underneath. What this does, it allows you to use very light pencil work. You're not going to have to go over and keep on erasing and leaving permanent lines inside of your drawing. So if you use a tracer first, which I do even when I do my original drawings, then trace it onto your watercolor paper, you're going to get just a better look, less chance of getting permanent lines on there. So a light box works really great. They're not that expensive. I do prefer to have the on-off switches up here. They have different brightnesses, different colors. But this works great, and the on-off switches up here because they're up higher. They're not going to interfere with your hand drawing. The last one I had, the switch on-off switch was over here, and I was always bumping it with my hand when I was drawing. So that's the only thing I can say about light boxes, is choose something that has the on-off controls up a little higher. That won't interfere with turning it on and off. And try it, and even if you don't have a light box but you use a window, you can also do that as well. But it's a great way to transfer your images over to your watercolor paper. I have decided to use a frame for my painting I'm going to be doing, and one thing you need to keep in mind, my paper is cut to a 5x7, but I need to allow for that little extra gap all the way around because that's going to eat up valuable space in my painting, especially where the little ears are, things like that. I want to make sure that my image fits all the way inside. So if you use a frame, it's best to go ahead and trace on the inside of your frame. This tells you where you need to keep your drawing in. That way you won't lose any of your little details way outside of the frame. Just a great tip to follow is make sure you double check how much space is going to be eaten up by the inside of your frames. For this particular painting, I'm doing more an illustrative type of a look where I have more of an exact outline of the image I drew. So I'm doing my pen work first. Now you can do your pen work second, it doesn't really matter. You just want to make sure you're using a permanent pen. And my favorites are the micron pens. They'll be permanent once they're dry, so you can easily go over your painting with any water medium after it's dry and it shouldn't smear for you. So this is one I can highly recommend. Well, let's get started. I'm going to speed this up as we begin the watercolor process. The area I'm going to start first is my carrot. I first want to put the water where I want the orange color to be. I don't want any of that orange color inside of my flowers or on the wheels or any of those areas. Watercolor has a unique property that will only flow where the paper is wet, so I'm going to keep my water inside of my carrot and then apply the color on top of that. I'm going to start with my lightest, brightest shade of orange, and then I'm going to be layering on my darker colors. With watercolor, you always start light and bright, and then you basically are painting the shadows. Once I had kind of put a layer over everything, I went back into my orange, reapplied it right when the paper was still wet. So it's wet from the water, wet from the color that I put on, and I'm adding this next layer in. And because my paper is wet and I'm layering this color on top, it's going to blend and do its own thing. It's a wet on wet technique. It creates some real pretty looks and soft color blends. Since my carrot is completely wet, I need to choose an area that I can paint that won't touch the carrot because remember, my colors will flow wherever the paper is wet. So I'm going to start with inside of the wheels first with this nice pretty shade of yellow. The next area I'm going to work on is the rabbit's hat, and I'm choosing a darker shade of brown and I'm mixing it to the consistency of about coffee. I'm going to layer in those colors and then I'm going to kind of squeeze my brush on my paper towel, and then I can come to the front and lift a little bit of color to create a lighter highlight. It's going to get another layer of color, but I'm just starting at that point. I'm going to use that same color for his little driver's glasses that he's wearing. My carrot has had a little bit of time to dry, so I'm okay with moving to the green part of the carrot on the back. I've just mixed two different shades of green, a lighter shade and a darker shade, and I've mixed them to about the consistency of coffee. I'm going to be layering this first layer on, and then I'm going to let it dry and then come back and add a little bit more color to that area. I'm going to use the same shade of greens for the scarf that goes around his neck, and then I'm going to use those greens as well for the leaves of my flowers. I'm using a smaller round brush for this area, a number 6 in the Velvet Touch Princeton line. I like this brush. It holds its tip really well. It springs back to its shape. I've gotten a lot of use out of my brushes. They're a fairly reasonably priced brush, so I do have some links inside of the description box if you'd like to check them out. I do receive a small little commission if you do buy them, but it doesn't cost you any more if you use a link. I'm going to be adding just a tiny bit of shadow line on this scarf, and I'm doing that by just going directly into the box of paint with a wet brush, so the paint is a little bit thicker, and I'm just tapping the lightest bit of little dots along the scarf at the bottom edge, and that should blend up through because that scarf is wet, and that's going to create a pretty little blended shadow. I'm going to move down and do another layer on the wheels. To paint the flowers on the front of the car, I'm going to be using some different shades of peaches and pinks. I'm first going to tap in a little bit of the peach color and then go in and choose the next layer of pink, which is the next shade down, and I'm going to tap that on as well. And because I'm tapping those colors on while they're wet, they're going to blend on their own. I'm going to be switching to a different brush to be able to do the inside of the ears and those small areas. I'm going to be switching to a number 8 long round. A long round has these longer bristles that come to just a nice little point. It works perfect to paint in those small little areas. I'm going to be using the same shade of pinks that I used on my flowers to create the inside of their ears, their little noses, and the little bright cheeks on their faces. I'm also going to use those same shades of pink to do the inside of the wheel and a little bit of a pattern around the wheel hubs as well. I gave my painting some time to dry, and then I mixed up a little purple as the accent color on the wheel hubs. I needed to make sure that pink was completely dry and my colors wouldn't mix all the way together. I've mixed it to about coffee consistency and then tapping in the color. Now it's time to brighten up those flowers a little bit more. I'm going to bump down the color of pink in my color box to the next shade, as well as tap in a little bit of that vibrant neon pink color. That neon pink always adds a little bit of extra brightness to wherever you might put it. I'm going to be adding some to the flowers, to the wheel wells, a little bit of that pink on the trim of the wheels as well. I tap in just a tiny bit to its nose and on the inside of their ears. I wanted the rabbit to have a darker feeling, so I'm mixing up a little bit of black in my set to about the consistency of tea. I'm going to add a couple layers to this, so I want to definitely start out light and then work my way a little bit darker. There is some areas on the rabbit that I want to make sure I have a little darker, and that's that ear on the very back. It will be darker than the front one, and then some darker shadow lines underneath his arm, on the front of his chest, and a little bit on his back as well. For the little rabbits, they're going to have a black and white look to them, so I'm using that small brush again and creating that little black detail around their faces. To make my bunny a little bit darker, I'm going to be using the same shade of black mixed to about tea to maybe coffee consistency and add that next layer on. Again, I want that little arm to be lighter that's out front and the back ear to definitely be darker than the front one, and add just a little bit more shadowing around the neckline where the scarf is to add a little bit more dimension to this little guy. I'm going to be lifting some color off the front of his muzzle once it completely dries. So I'm adding just more of the darkness, but then I'm going to make it a little brighter around his nose. As your painting is drying, you can check your hat to see if you need to add a little bit more dark to it, and I did add another layer. This is where I tap in just a little bit of green for my leaves. I was going to make that windshield on the front the same color as the wheels, that golden color. His little steering wheel, I made it the same color as his hat, just kind of making it simple. To add just the tiniest bit of color to the inside of my rabbits so they're just not plain white paper, I took a little bit of that peach color that I had used for the flowers. I watered it down a fair amount and then just tapped in a little bit of that peach color. To create the blush cheeks, I watered down some of the pink paint, and I'm basically just kind of tapping a little spot on each of the little cheeks. I don't want to overwork the color. I want it to kind of just sit there and blend out naturally. To give a little bit more dimension to my carrot, I'm taking some of the orange color and mixing a little bit of brown with it. I want that little darker shade of a shadow color. So I'm going to be using that color on the little lines on the carrot, at the bottom, around the wheel well, and tapping it in around some of the flowers to get more of a shadow look there. To help with the banding of the colors so it doesn't look so banded, I take a little bit of water and tap it over the top as well. And then I come back in and take that original shade of orange that I used and mixed it to about more of a milk consistency, a little darker. And I'm putting little splashes of that brighter, darker, colorful orange on top. That's just going to add that next layer of quality of brightness to this little carrot area. After the faces had had time to dry, I go back in with my ink pen and give these little guys some whiskers. Gotta have whiskers if they're going to be bunnies. I'm using a nib size of a 01, which is a nice small nib, to create these fine little lines with. To create the road area where he's driving on, I just took some of the brown from his hat and a little bit of that black that was already mixed off to the side, mixed it together and created a road pattern. I just brushed my paint on horizontally back and forth to create that look. I need to make sure my ground is completely dry before I add the blue. I don't want my blue and brown to mix together. When you're doing skies, the sky will be the darkest color at the very top, and then as it moves down, it gradually gets lighter towards the horizon line. I'm going to be starting at the top. I did not put any water on my paper first. I just went directly in with my watercolor because it was mixed to about coffee consistency. But if you want a little bit more open time, first put on water and then put your paint on. I'm going to be using a little bit of Kleenex, kind of balled up and tapping into that darker wet color to create a little bit more of an atmospheric cloudy feeling. Your paint needs to be wet in order for this cloud look to happen. And a lighter form of paper works the best for this technique as well. I let everything dry, and now I'm going to get out those color pencils to create just a little bit of scribbly bits to add a little bit extra whimsical vibe to this painting. The paper I used to paint this painting on is the Canson brand 140-pound watercolor paper. The Canson brand is slightly smoother. It's a wonderful texture to be able to use colored pencils on the top of. Some papers are more bumpy and they don't work as well as a smoother paper will. So I do like adding the pencils to this paper. The color pencil step is very much an optional step. You can be done with this just with watercolor, but I love to have a little bit of extra texture and some color combinations, and I can get that with the color pencils. I always like to encourage everyone to create with how and with what you like to create with. This was done in watercolor and color pencils, but it could easily be done in any art medium and come up with a whole new look. So take your time, do what makes you happy, and enjoy the process. I've almost got all of the detail work done, so let's see what this painting looks like inside of a frame. And here the painting is looking cute as can be. I just love those little baby bunnies in the back and how their ears are kind of blowing in the wind. And doesn't it make you wonder what the story is of where they're going in their carrot car? If you're new to my channel and you like doing art and crafts, come on over and see what I'm doing. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. Leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up. It really does help YouTube push my channel out there. Well, thanks for joining me today, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again, and perhaps next time you'll paint right along with me.